Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Sayfie here with Chris Balas and Anthony Broome. We are recording on Wednesday morning, November 27th, ahead of Thanksgiving. Usually record on Thursday, but happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Happy Michigan-Ohio State week. We're about halfway there, and it feels like it's been 2 weeks already. It's only Wednesday, but we will get there to the game on Saturday. We will get into Michigan against Ohio State, the entire matchup. We'll make our predictions towards the end of the show. We'll also pick games from around the country as well, rivalry week in college football, last week of the regular season. Before we get into all of it, make sure to like the video. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Head to thewolverine.com. We got a special offer that ends Saturday night. No promo code needed. Just go to thewolverine.com. Get behind the paywall there. Get on our message board. Just sign up. It's $1 for your first week and then 50% off an annual subscription after that. So, hey, at least get in with that $1 for a week. It's going to be worth it, especially with what we have coming. Coverage from Columbus this weekend, signing day next week, transfer portal opening the week after that. So tons to look forward to over at thewolverine.com. But let's get into Michigan and Ohio State, the game, the 120th meeting between these two schools. Michigan has a 61-52-6 advantage all time. They've won 3 in a row for the first time since 1995 to 1997. And as we sit here right now, it's been 1,824 days since Ohio State has beat Michigan. Of course, Wolverines come in as a massive underdog, 20.5 points. Over-under is at 43. Against Ohio State, which was just listed at number 2 in the college football playoff rankings that came out on Tuesday night. They're 10-1, lone loss to Oregon. Michigan and Ohio State tied up in Columbus all time, 28-2. Michigan with a slight edge, 25-24-1 at Ohio Stadium where they'll play this weekend. But Michigan's won there just one time since 2000, which was, of course, the amazing game 2 years ago, 45-23 win. Gentlemen, for me, this week is just crawling by. I can't wait for Saturday.
I don't know if I'd go that far, just because it's not the funeral march that it was during the Rich Rodriguez years, for example. But it's one of those things where it's very, very likely that Michigan's streak is going to end against Ohio State, and 20.5 point favorite down there. And this is not the most talented Michigan team that's ever traveled to Columbus. So to me, it's going to be one of those things where, hey, let's see if they can hang around for a while and make it interesting. And if they do, then that soft Ohio State team in the cold will probably fold at the end, and it'll probably be even more interesting. So, but yeah, it's one of those things to me where you're trying to cram everything in before Thanksgiving, get all your stories in, and then on Friday, boom, after you celebrate with the family, you head down to Columbus, which is one of the worst cities in the country, and do some work. It's more exciting when you have a shot, even though last time I didn't think they were going to win down there either, and they pulled it out. So I'll tell you what, at the same time, there is that sliver of hope, right? Because Michigan played its best game against Northwestern, and now you're starting to say, all right, is there a puncher's chance here? And if they run the ball, if they get some great defense, which they've played extremely well in the last 6 quarters, then maybe. So, but yeah, to me, it's not going slow, but I'm excited. I'm excited to get down there and see what they got. See if they got something in the tank that I didn't think they had.
It's not going slow for me. It's actually going super fast because I'm about 12 hours away from flying out of Fort Myers, and it's been beautiful down here, and I'm not excited to get back to the cold. But I don't fold in the cold like the Ohio State Buckeyes like. We're built for this. Also, shout out to my wife and I just grabbed breakfast this morning down here in Fort Myers at a place called FK Your Diet, which stands for Foster Kids Your Diet. The chef and the owner is actually an Ohio State fan. I had some Michigan garb on in there this morning, and they were Chef Doug and his son. They were extremely nice people, some of the best breakfast food I've ever had. So just wanted to shout them out this morning. And it gave me hope that not all Ohio State fans are some of the most deplorable people on the face of the earth. So shout out Chef Doug. Shout out to FK Your Diet. 5% of their proceeds go to charities that help foster kids. So good food and a good cause too. So shout out to those guys.
Great cause. Good job, guys.
Yeah, they're nice because they've been embarrassed 3 straight years. They have to be nice. They got nothing to hang their hat on. But that's awesome. And yeah, the only thing before we get into more of the matchup stuff that Michigan has this opportunity to, when you talk about the 2024 team, there aren't a lot of glowing terms right now, especially coming off of what Michigan has done. But if they're able to pull off an upset, I think that it's at least the first thing or the second thing people will reference when they talk about this team in 20 years or 30 years. Oh, yeah, 2024. It won't be a team that's talked about much, but it'll be like, oh, yeah, they beat Ohio State, though, down in Columbus. It was crazy. Some of the teams in the 90s did the same thing where you go 8-4 or 9-4, but, and you may not get talked about as much as 97, right, which was right next to some of those. But you beat Ohio State, and it kind of gets people off your back a little bit. And it allows these guys, a lot of them that already have a great legacy here, to kind of stamp that even further, not with a great season, but with, something that would be a great triumph, in and of itself.
Undefeated against Ohio State, right?
Yeah.
And which would be unbelievable. Can you imagine if Davis Warren became a quarterback that wins in Columbus, where guys like Chad Henne and Tom Brady couldn't do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Denard Robinson, unbelievable. What it would mean to him and to his legacy, and that would really be exciting. So that's what I'm hopeful for. I love the kid, and boy, it's going to be tough, guys. They're going to be shorthanded, as we know. I hope Colston Loveland plays. I hope Will Johnson plays. And if not, then I'll say this. Those guys stepped up, right? The last couple of weeks, those backups did. And maybe it's a guy like Hogan Hansen, if Colston can't go, who has a Colston Loveland type game like in 2022 and makes some plays. So we'll see. But to me, it's you've got nothing to lose, right? Don't go down there and play. Don't play scared. And it sounds to me, and we'll have this in there inside the fort on Friday, that they certainly aren't preparing that way. It looks like they are. I don't want to say confident, but they certainly aren't scared about going down to Columbus. And this is the same cast of characters that we've seen for a couple years down there in Columbus, right? And these guys don't know beating Michigan, right? There's going to be a lot of pressure on them. This is the reason they came back. Everybody's going to say, well, this is the Michigan JV team. You better not blow this. If this is a tight game, are they going to pucker up and follow the lead of their head coach? I certainly think it's possible, and I certainly hope so.
The funniest potential outcome to me, other than a Michigan win, because it would be the most out of left field one of any of these maybe that they've ever had since maybe even like the 69 win, right? Is if Ohio State beats Michigan, whether it's by 1 point or Ryan Day gets his wish and they win by 100 points, they're going to rush the field and they're going to act like what happened the last 3 years didn't happen, and that this was this makes up for it, and that balance has been restored and all that. Just remember that when the chips were down, Ryan Day and the Ohio State Buckeyes choked in 3 of the biggest games any of them will ever play. And that's why they don't talk about last year's game, because it was settled on the field. So, Saturday, kind of an unofficial end to, I don't want to say this era or the era that was of Michigan football, just because of the amount of guys in this game who have made plays to help win this game, like with the Donovan Edwards, the Colston Lovelands, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant. So yeah, I mean, it's I think we know what this thing is headed towards. I think we know what the most likely outcome is, but we'll talk about it here in a bit. I feel like that finally last week we saw them play fast and carefree, but not careless. And I think that's a good spot to be in heading into this one.
The interesting thing about Ryan Day is 3 years ago, I was kind of early on hey, we don't know how good of a coach this guy is. And then now I'm kind of like, all right, he's not as bad as everyone says either. Like, he's kept them at a pretty high level, and they lost to 3 great Michigan teams. I mean, the loss in 22 was probably the most damning, just because Michigan needed all those big plays to do it. And really, they didn't structure their defense well enough to stop the only thing that was going to beat them without Blake Corum. But other than that, I mean, you're looking at, the golden era of Michigan football. Yeah, they got 3 wins over Ohio State. And we'll see what Ryan Day does this weekend, it would certainly be. I mean, there's so much pressure on him, but at the same time, he's got the much better team. Like you said, Chris, Michigan's not going to go down there scared, though. There are 2 players on scholarship at Michigan or have once been on scholarship that have lost to Ohio State as Wolverines. Can you guys name them?
Boy, that's a tough one. That lost in 2019. So it's obviously the veterans who've been here. Quentin Johnson.
That's one. The other one you guys aren't going to get, I don't think.
Is it a long snapper?
Yeah, William Wagner.
There you go.
Dang it. That was going to be my guess.
See?
Okay.
All right. So we got it.
You did.
We know ball.
All right. Yeah, we know ball. So there you go.
Those 2. Now, can you guys name the Ohio State players that have beaten Michigan as Buckeyes?
There's not one of them. There's not a single one of them.
I believe that's true.
There are 0. There are 0 Ohio State players that have beaten Michigan as Buckeyes.
0.0.
Exactly right. Not even 0.1. It's 0.0. And a couple others that have lost to Michigan in other uniforms. Caleb Downs. We'll talk about him here in a second. Seth McLaughlin, the center, who unfortunately went down with an injury last week, won't play in the game, but lost to Michigan as a member of Alabama last season. So just an interesting thing. It's added motivation for these Ohio State guys that decided to come back. They want their gold pants or whatever they call them. But at the same time, they don't have that experience. And for a lot of years here in Ann Arbor, we've seen Michigan players not understand how to win this game. They didn't play their best game. They didn't do all the things that they had to do. They untied the shoes of J.K. Dobbins and things like that. Just a little stupid mistakes. It's not winning football in the biggest game really of your life to that point, or tied with the other Ohio State games you play in. But let's get into it here. Michigan against Ohio State. Before we do, we got to talk about our friends over at Prizepicks. It's the most fun way to enjoy watching sports, where you can win up to 100 times your money with Prizepicks Daily Fantasy. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. It's a great way to test your skills as a fan. It's simple and easy to play. You can make your picks in less than 20 seconds. I get on there every Saturday morning, check out the projections, and make a bunch of picks for college football. I do okay, but I'm sure a lot of people out there could do a little bit better than me. It's fun to play, though. Fun to have some skin in the game there. And we have a special offer for you. Go to prizepicks.com or the Prizepicks app. Use the code Wolverine to receive a guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in lineups. Again, sign up today. Get $50 instantly when you play $5 as long as you use the promo code Wolverine. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed as long as you use code Wolverine. Prizepicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Let's talk about the Michigan offense against the Ohio State defense. This is Max Bredesen against Caleb Downs. Once again, they went at it a little bit last year when Michigan played Alabama, but a lot more to it in this matchup. Stat worth mentioning that I always question, because the team that wins usually runs for more because you're leading and you keep it on the ground a little bit more. You want to use the clock to your advantage, but the winner of the rushing battles won the last 22 meetings in this series. 2000 was the last time where it wasn't the case. Michigan, of course, goes down there, and Drew Henson has a big game and ends up rushing it in for a game-sealing touchdown. But certainly, I think if Michigan's going to be competitive in this game, they're going to have to run the football somewhat effectively. If they're going to win this game, I think they're going to have to run and get some plays out of Davis Warren against an Ohio State defense that ranks top 5 in pretty much every category. Scoring defense, they're first. Total defense, first. Rushing defense, third. Passing, they're fourth. Really no true weaknesses on this Ohio State defense.
And I fully expect them to not respect the Michigan passing game. And to me, it's going to be tough, because that means they're going to load the box against the run. And, Kirk Campbell said last night on the radio show, we put up an article this morning, that they've got plans and they've been showing some things that they're going to run some things off that they've been saving for this game. But teams adjust, and they've got to run the ball. Somehow they got to run the ball. This to me is a Kalel Mullings type game. And I want to see Donovan Edwards out there on the field with him at times too. Get your best 11 on the field like they like to talk about, and maybe do some things with him in the passing game again. But there just aren't enough weapons, in my opinion, for Michigan to move the ball consistently. And that's what worries me most about this game is that, okay, maybe after your first scripted drive, you better not go 3 and out. You better have some success on your first drive at least, and alter field position. But if they could score, that'd be fantastic, because I think Ohio State's going to adjust to what Michigan's not been showing and to what they haven't been doing all year, and then it's going to be really hard to move the ball. So and again, if Colston Loveland is out, they probably had a plan to take him out of the game anyway, maybe bracket him or something like that and make the other guys beat them. But if he can't play, and we don't know for sure at this point, but sounding dicey. Some of the insiders on our message board that have had insight in the past are sending some ominous clues, guys. And we asked yesterday somebody, and they didn't know. And that's not for us to break anyway about injuries. But if he can't go, then boy, it makes that task even tougher. So, and to me, it's going to be hard for this team to even get to 17 points, let alone score enough to win without getting some help from Ohio State in the way of turnovers and stuff like that.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, are there going to be some trick plays? Are there going to be some different looks that they try to run? Absolutely. We know that there's always something in their bag for this game. Might even involve Donovan Edwards throwing the ball, as we saw in last year's game, as we've seen in other big games throughout his career. But it's not like just in terms of Colston Loveland. Like, you take Colston Loveland out of the USC game, and you still have Colel Mullings, and you still have Donovan Edwards, and you still have guys that make plays on both sides of the ball. Will Johnson had a pick 6 in that game. If you're telling me that they're going to go into Columbus without their 2 best players on each side of the ball, that's tough, man, especially on an offense. They run so much off of, what Colston Loveland can do on the field. And, they do have, their defense is tremendous. We saw that in last year's game. That was a dogfight. Don't mistake what happened the 2 years before that as being dominant over Ohio State. That was a dogfight last year. And most of those guys came back, and, they got better by adding Caleb Downs. So it's really going to take, the offensive line, it's going to take so many outlier performances. The offensive line putting together its first good cohesive game of the year. Davis Warren has done a better job of holding on to the football, but it's going to take his best game. It's going to take your back's best game in terms of breaking tackles and things like that. And, we saw Tyler Morris's best game last week. Need more of that. And there's so many things when you put it all on paper, you list it all out, where, the path to victory for Michigan involves so many outlier things happening on the offensive side of the ball that it's hard to predict a ton of success there. The best shot that they have is they play good complementary football. The defense is dominant, and the offense takes advantage of the opportunities that it does have. So it's really hard to find an advantage somewhere, especially when you don't have Colston Loveland out there, if they don't have Colston Loveland out there. So not to poo-poo their chances. I think they do have a chance in this game because these teams do play up against each other. But on paper, it's it's tough to see what that path looks like.
Yeah, and look, I think that they're going to have to play mistake-free, but they're also going to have to make big plays. And it's just hard to do both for this Michigan offense. We've seen in every big game this year against the elite competition, right, the Texases and the Oregons, there have just been these long periods of time, and a lot of them at the beginning of those games where they just can't pick up a first down. And then it puts the defense in a rough spot. And you lose the field position battle, which this team needs to win. Even last week, the offense got going, but it's not like they put up over 500 yards. A lot of it was starting at their own 47 or at the opponent's 48, things like that. So they can't have those lulls in this game, but they also have to play mistake-free. We all remember sitting there at halftime in 2021 talking about, man, if Cade McNamara didn't throw that interception. But the thing is, Michigan had more around him, and, we just didn't know what that second half was going to be. They go in up 1. You're thinking, okay, they effed around and found out, you can't make a mistake like that in this game. But it turns out they could have. There's not enough around Davis Warren this time, in my opinion, for him to make a mistake like that. So he's going to have to play clean. I think it's going to be really tough against an Ohio State defense that leads the FBS. In pressure rate, 39.8% of dropbacks, they get pressure. They've got 6 guys with double-digit pressures, JTT, Jack Sawyer, both at 30+, Sawyer with 40. Good corners that are going to test Michigan's wide receivers and play up at the line of scrimmage. Denzel Burke he's had a really rough career in a lot of ways, ups and downs, but he's playing better this season, minus the Oregon game. And then Igbinison, a guy Michigan wanted a couple years out of the transfer portal from Ole Miss, has done a good job. The safeties are great. Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles moves down to linebacker. Like, they just have aces in their places, I think, all over the field. And it's just going to be tough sledding. It was tough sledding last year for the Michigan offense against this defense. Now they're only more experienced, and Knowles is there for another season. I think that they have kind of found their stride a little bit. But anything else from Michigan's offense standpoint? I agree with you guys. Having Loveland would be massive. But anything else on the Michigan offense?
Got it. I think you're going to see Davis Warren have to force some things downfield in this game too. So it's almost likely, right, that we're going to see a mistake, maybe an interception, and everybody's going to jump on him. And it's not like he's got a great group of receivers to work with, but it's really going to come down to the offensive line guys playing as well as they did last week. And this is a different animal against Ohio State in that environment when you're going to have to go silent count. So they're going to be able to get off the ball. Just a really, really tough task. Again, if they get above 13 points, to me, I will be pleasantly surprised. And you got to score in the 20s at least to win this football game, as we've seen, right? So I just think too much to ask this year. But hey, it'll be a nice little reprieve for Ohio State before they start getting their beatdowns again next year in the big house.
I think the biggest key to me, in terms of these outlier things need to happen, is you do need to let Davis Warren cut it loose. And you need to live with the mistakes that might come with that, because if it's a deep shot down the field that gets picked off, that's an arm punt. And you put your defense out there, and, you lean on your defense, which I know we'll talk about them in a second. But I think this is a game where, again, it's so cliche, but complementary football, taking advantage of the opportunities that you do have, because early on in this game, this will be tight early on, and there's going to be a chance to make a play somewhere. Which one of these teams makes the big play to swing the momentum early on? And I think we talked about this a little bit on Monday Night Show. Like, Michigan has to play with a lead, because if you do take a lead early in this game, it's a very good Ohio State team. The margin of error is very low from your perspective, but the more pressure you can put on them, the more interested I'm seeing in where this goes. So got to take an early lead, got to let Davis Warren cut it loose.
Yeah, is the path to kind of dominate the early part of the game somehow with a couple big plays, pin them back maybe, and then just hold on by getting like 3 or 4 field goals from Zavada, and you win like 23-20 or something like that. I think that a fast start AB is huge. Of course, we could say that about every game, but when it comes to a game against an opponent that's this talented and that frankly has more talent than you this year, it's really big to get a big play or a break early on maybe. Let's flip it over to the Michigan defense against the Ohio State offense, but before we do, got to talk about our friends over at 5 Star. Today's show is brought to you by 5 Star Fans. The thrill, the heartbreak, the pride. Being a fan is a wild ride with 5 Star Fans. You can finally get in the game like never before. 5 Star Fans is the place where fiercely loyal fans can directly reward their favorite players. For a limited time, 5 Star Fans is giving you $5 to send to your favorite player. Just visit 5-starfans.com today. That's 5-starfans.com. You can give to recruits. If they choose your school, the money goes to them, and if they don't, then I believe you get it back. So it's just a way that fans can get in on this whole NIL thing. It's blowing up here in college sports. Let's talk about the Michigan defense against Ohio State's offense. New quarterback this year. Of course, they scapegoated Kyle McCord, who's now at Syracuse and is having a pretty good season. But Will Howard comes in. No surprise, he's been very good. Leads the nation with a completion percentage of 74%. He's got over 2,600 yards, 26 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, can run the ball as well, 7 touchdowns in the red zone. As a rusher, Makeshift offensive line, or at least reshuffled offensive line. Carson Hinsman in there at center. First start there this season was last week after Seth McLaughlin went down with the Achilles injury in practice, which is a really tough blow. Their left tackle, Josh Simmons, has been out for several weeks. Donovan Jackson moves from left guard to left tackle, and new left guard in there, Austin Siereveld, who's going to start his fourth career game this weekend. And look, Michigan's got to dominate the trenches on this side of the football with their defensive line against that O-line and make Will Howard uncomfortable. He's made mistakes even this year in some of the big games, fumbles and interceptions and things like that. So as much as we say Michigan's got to play mistake-free, they got to force some Ohio State mistakes and maybe get a break as well.
Rattle him early and get those guys, knock them on their butts and send a message up front, right? And do something kind of like the 1997 Penn State game on the road when they set the tone with their defense. If they can do that and get in his head early, then maybe you got a shot to keep them off the scoreboard at least for a while. So, and the longer it's tied, guys, and the longer they're maybe down by a score or up by a score, the better in this football game. You've got to shorten the game, but you've got to send a message with those guys up front, and I think they can. And a lot of it's going to depend on the whistle too. If it's going to be one of those games where Mason Graham gets held 10 times and they don't call anything, as we've seen in Columbus in the past, I'll be interested to see who the crew is down there, the officiating crew, if they've got like embalmers from Columbus, right? And and Columbus tool and die or something.
A local mortician.
Exactly. A local mortician who gets a boner when they score. I can't believe I just said that on this podcast. I'm sorry. But you see the pictures, right? And it's like in the past, it's been ridiculous. So, but that's not what's going to determine this game. It's going to be the guys up front. And I think Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant have a great opportunity here, Rayshon Benny, against this line to really make it interesting. So we're going to see them take some shots downfield. They're going to test that secondary. But to help that secondary, these guys up front really have got to be at their best on Saturday.
I believe that's the first time the word boner has ever been uttered on this podcast.
Now there's
first time for everything.
I would apologize.
Now there's two.
I would apologize, but I apologize for absolutely nothing. So.
Oh, all right. Let me dial it back in here. I when Will Howard committed to Ohio State, you just go back and look at what he did at Kansas State. Felt that was kind of a marginal upgrade at best over Kyle McCord, and having watched Ohio State as much as I have this year now, that was wrong. I feel like every game I watch Will Howard, it feels like he starts 12 of 12, 13 of 13 almost every time I watch them play. Actually kind of Jared Goff-esque in that regard, but they've done a really nice job, and I'll give them their flowers here of kind of like this is still a Ferrari, right? Like you've got, at least two receivers who are first round caliber of guys. You've got two really good backs in Judkins and Trevion Henderson. But we've kind of seen them, it's not a direct ripping off of the Michigan formula, but you have seen them, when you hire Chip Kelly, like you're going to have a lot more of the interesting types of runs, and you're going to do some more things with your running backs. And I think they've done a really nice job of that. They're efficient. Will Howard doesn't make a ton of mistakes. Jeremiah Smith is already maybe the best wide receiver in college football, and I don't even know if he's 18 yet. Emeka Ibuka is a guy that a lot of people think will be a first-round pick this spring. So, listen, man, it's gonna. The one thing I'll say on both sides of the ball up front is that I'm not crazy about what I wasn't crazy about what Ohio State had there before they were dealing with injuries, and now that they are a little banged up there, I think that has cracked the door open for Michigan's defensive line to be absolutely dominant in this game. You've got your two first-round defensive tackles up front, and you've got a couple great edge rushers, and you've got guys that seem like, we've saw a lot with this Michigan defense throughout the year where you'd have these moments and plays of brilliance at each level of the field, but it could never quite kind of mesh together. I do feel like over the last few games, we've seen that all kind of work in tandem and work in unison. And I don't know if it's, Wink making an adjustment. I don't know if it's the guys playing faster because they've been in the system now for a couple months here. But I do think that Michigan's defense is going to give them a puncher's chance in this game, specifically whatever that defensive line does. So if they can, I think this Ohio State offense has the potential to be pick your poison. I think there's a world where Michigan can take away the run game and get gashed through the air still. I think there's, a world where you take away the pass and they just hammer you on the ground. I think that they're built to do that. And they are a national championship contender for a reason. I don't think it takes as many outlier performances on defense for Michigan to make this a game, but we talk about Michigan having to come out and be dominant early on. It starts up front on defense for them.
It does. And I think that it's going to start up front for Ohio State too. They're going to want to establish the run. It was kind of funny last year before the game in his pregame interview on the field with Fox. They said, what's going to determine the winner of this game? And he said, whoever wins the turnover margin, who wins the rushing battle. First of all, he was right. But second of all, Ryan Day would have never said that in 2019 when he was in his first year as a head coach. He's changed in his mentality. I think Michigan has made him do that. And I don't think all of it is authentic when it comes to the way he acts and, kind of plays the tough guy, persona a little bit more lately. But at the same time, he's understood the importance of that. They have two great running backs in TreVeyon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. They still have talent on the offensive line. Like Carson Hinsman comes in at center, but he's technically the backup, but he started every regular season game last year, including at Michigan Stadium. He still has experience. So I think they're going to try to establish the run. We'll see how much they're able to do it. Wink Martindale talked yesterday about how, hey, we have this kind of, this juxtaposition here where we have to stop the run and we have to limit the big plays. It's hard to do both. You saw that for Ohio State 2022, stop the run most of the game, couldn't limit the big plays, and then get, a couple big runs on them late by Donovan Edwards. But he said we might have to stop the run with light boxes a little bit more in this game. But at all costs, I think you have to stop the run. But again, it's easier said than done when there's three werewolves, as Wink Martindale called them, in the receiving corps for Ohio State. Jeremiah Smith, number 1 overall recruit last year, plays like he's about to go to the NFL next season. Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, probably the third werewolf, but have some other productive guys, including the tight ends, that get involved a little bit. So it's going to be a challenge, a huge challenge. The only difference between this offense, I think, under Will Howard and with the running backs and the way they've leaned on the run game more is they're not as explosive as the last few years. But I think in the bigger games, that helps them. They're a little more consistent. And like you said, Anthony, kind of similar to Michigan a little bit in that way of years past. But anything else on this Ohio State offense going up against Michigan defense? Secondary's got to step up if they don't have Will. I think it's obvious, but
27 degrees on Saturday, guys, at kickoff, and 18 real feel. So we know they're soft. We've seen it. We understand it. They blamed snow flurries. I think it was the flu and snow flurries. Yep. And you know what? There's always been an excuse. So it's going to be a little cold. So I would imagine that if something happens on Saturday that doesn't go their way, we're going to hear about how cold it was and how the football gods don't love them and so on and so forth. So, but I love the fact that it's going to be cold. And there's an interesting quote that from the Michigan side that's going to come out later this week that we will share about tough teams in the cold. So we'll be watching for that. But hey, punch them in the mouth. That's what I got to say. Punch them in the mouth and make them think. And remember that they are soft, and that would be fantastic.
I would just say, like, make them earn it. Don't go in there and get the doors blown off, and then Ryan Day's puffing his chest. He'll puff his chest regardless because that's what they do down there. I just don't beat yourself. That's all you can really ask for. If they play a clean game on both sides of the ball, I think they will hang with them, similar to how they hung with Indiana. Now, you don't want to get into the hole that you got early in that Indiana game, but they can hang in this game. I think a lot. I think when this spread opened as 23.5 points, I was like, you could probably take the alternate spread of half of that number and bet it and feel comfortable about it. I just think that Michigan is going to hang, and we'll see what happens from there.
If they do, on the heels of this defense will be remembered as a pretty good defense. I mean, if things go south, that they probably won't be, just because of all the other instances throughout the year. Even though they've improved, even though they played better lately, this is kind of what you're remembered for. And then I think, not that they care, right? They don't want to finger point and blame the other side, but then the issue will always be about this team not getting a quarterback, not having the offense that you wanted, things like that. But, they want to win the game. But, just kind of a subplot is how we'll look back to on this team as the years go by. Let's get to our predictions here. Michigan against Ohio State. And we have to talk about our friends over at Gametime. If you're braving this one and going down to Columbus, good on you. And you can get your tickets if you haven't already with Gametime, the exclusive ticketing partner of the Wolverine podcast. It's the easiest way to get tickets to the biggest games, concerts, or shows. The app is super easy to use. You can get tickets to, like I said, everything, not just Michigan football at Ohio State, but whatever bowl game Michigan is in. You can get your tickets on Gametime, Michigan basketball games, NBA, NFL, concerts, as well over at Gametime. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code ON3. That's ON, the numeral 3 for $20 off. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Let's get to our predictions. We'll start with our offensive players of the game. For me, I'm looking at Kalel Mullings as somebody that has to be established in this game if Michigan competes. And I'm going to go with him to play well. Got back on track last week with 3 touchdowns.
I'm going to go with Donovan Edwards, and more hoping that this guy goes out the way he should, right? Have a great game down there and boost your draft stock. And it's been up and down for him, and a lot of people down on him between the tackles and so on and so forth. But I think he's going to break 1 or 2, and they're going to find ways to get him involved. And so we'll see.
We have a guest picker here.
We do. She's going to go with Donovan as well. Yeah.
Okay. I'll go with Davis Warren, because if they're going to win, it's because he played very well. So I'll just project on that front. Davis.
Come
Warren,
on, Davis.
offensive player of the game.
Davis Warren, come on, man. This is your moment.
It could be. I was up in the stands in 2017. Michigan's down 24-20. They have the football chance to take the lead with a touchdown. I said to my brother, John O'Corn's got a chance to become a legend. It'd have been an awful year, right, at quarterback for Michigan. But he did have a chance there to become a legend. Of course, it didn't work out. But these, people forget about a lot if you go out and do it in this game. So he has an opportunity here, just like the entire team does. But, certainly for the quarterback, there's more on their shoulders. Defensive player of the game, I'm just sticking with Mason Graham. I feel like they have to win this one up front. When you look at what Ohio State has, especially that, center, left guard, left tackle, there's some opportunities there. Michigan's running a lot more twists lately. I think, between him, Josiah, Derek Moore, Kenneth Grant, of course, they can make some plays kind of on the interior there, maybe pinpoint the left side of that line.
I'm going with Josiah Stewart. I think he's going to have a big game and get in the backfield quite a bit. I think they're going to give some added attention to those guys in the middle and maybe take their chances a few times. And they're like Josiah to have a big game. Derek Moore, we're looking at you too, man. It's time for you to step up, get in there and do your thing. Let's see you get a couple on Saturday.
If they're going to stop the run in this game, it's going to be because Kenneth Grant had a huge game in front of, I assume, a number of NFL scouts in still one of the biggest games he'll ever play in his life. So Kenneth Grant, my pick.
Okay. X factor for me. It's a tough one because I'm about to pick Ohio State to win. So it's like, okay, I don't necessarily think Michigan's going to get that performance. But I do think the importance of what the corners do, and specifically Zeke Berry, he's done a pretty solid job at the corner position since moving over there from nickel a few weeks ago. And he's going to have to play a big role this weekend. He's going to have to make some plays.
I'm going to go with Jay Sean Barham in terms of making sure that Will Howard doesn't escape and have some big runs too. I think his speed's going to be important there, and I think they're going to use him to bring some pressure as well. So if he has a big game, then I think Michigan's got a puncher's chance here to keep that Ohio State offense in check a little bit.
X factors, right?
Yep.
Yes.
I'm going with Jordan Marshall, the Ohio kid, Mr. Football in the state of Ohio. I think they might have something dialed up for him. Also, wouldn't be surprised to see him have a big return that sets Michigan up early in this game.
We'll take
the things you're predicting. Davis Warren having a big game. Jordan Marshall. I mean, that's kind of what you need.
All of a sudden,
it's like no man knows the future. We don't keep track of any of this.
True. Yeah. But I'm saying, I mean, could be foreshadowing. Maybe a Michigan pick here in just a second. Anthony, start us off then with your final score. What do you got?
Listen, I've been texting friends all week, and it's a similar kind of carefree sort of optimism that I felt before the 2022 game. I can't pick a Michigan win here. It's Ohio State's the better football team. They're at home. I will say this. I think that Michigan has enough to piss them off and get them into a 4-quarter game. And it all comes down to who makes the big play. And when you have more big players on your team, the chances of you making that play increase. So I will go with Ohio State. I think it's going to be close enough to where it hurts because you're right there in the end. I have Ohio State 21, Michigan 16.
Yeah, I got Michigan hanging around for a while, but Ohio State's got too much firepower. Those receivers are going to take off those Louis V gloves and go out there and catch some passes, and it's going to be 34-13 at the end. It'll be more if Ryan Day can. He'll run it up and, to puff out his chest that he beat the Michigan JV team when he couldn't beat a good Michigan football team. But 34-13 is what I got.
My favorite thing about a rivalry, even when you win, if you celebrate it too much when you beat a bad team, then did you really win, right? And then that's what the Michigan fans will be saying. But
right,
I have very similar 34-10 Ohio State. I don't trust the Michigan offense. I really liked what they did last week. I don't know that it translates to playing much better competition on the road. And for those reasons, I think that a defense holds up to a certain extent, but I just don't think they're going to be able to do it all by themselves. And, at a certain point, the dam's going to break a little bit. And that'll be unfortunate for Michigan in this one. Let's move on to our final segment. No man knows the future. We'll pick 4 games from around the country, including one massive rivalry game that we will get to in a second. But first, a somewhat big rivalry game. Top 15 matchup, South Carolina at Clemson. Clemson 2.5-point favorite, over-unders 49.5. This one, noon on ESPN. Clemson coming off a game against the Citadel. They're doing the whole SEC thing, but I'm going South Carolina. They've been probably the most dangerous and frisky, decent team in the country this year. Quarterback's legit. Young guy that they're it's going to be fun to watch for a few years here. I got South Carolina.
Yeah, I'm with you, buddy. I think that's true, and I don't know how I've done this year. We'll have to go back and look at the picks. I don't really break these down, but you just go by gut feeling. And I got a feeling when I saw this game, I said South Carolina's going to beat this team. So that's where I am.
I will go with Clemson just to be different. A bit of a college football playoff elimination game with Clemson sitting there at number 12. South Carolina still on the outside looking in at number 15. Got Alabama ahead of them, Ole Miss ahead of them, but should be a fun one. I'm actually looking forward to this game, watching it in the box score while we're at Ohio State, Michigan.
Next one, Notre Dame at USC. Notre Dame 7.5-point favorite, over under 51.5, 3:30 on CBS. Notre Dame, I think, probably needs this one to get into the playoff. I think Northern Illinois loss is kind of like 1.5 losses if you're them, and probably can't afford more than 2 with that schedule, or you can't even afford 2 or 2.5 losses with that schedule. USC's playing okay. They're not what people thought they could be beginning of the year, and I think they keep it close enough to cover the number here.
To hell with Notre Dame. That's what Bo Schembechler used to say, and I say to hell with them too. I like USC to win. Big upset.
Love it.
last week I backed the armed forces and that blew up in my face. I still respect the troops. I do not respect Notre Dame. Give me USC.
Okay. 3 for 3. Now we have the biggest rivalry game maybe that we've talked about all show. That's Rutgers at Michigan State.
Here it is.
The Situation Trophy's on the line. If you're listening right now on the audio, you got to go to the YouTube. The picture of the Situation Trophy is up on the screen as we speak. Send us a like, subscribe to the channel as well while you're at it. MSU 1.5 point favorite, over under 47.5, 330 on Fox Sports 1. Rutgers coming off a loss where they lost in just spectacular fashion. And Michigan State not playing really well at all. Give me Schiano's team. They're going to fight to the end if I know one thing about Greg Schiano teams.
If I know one thing about Greg Schiano teams, it's that they kind of suck too. So this is going to be a bunch of suck in front of a bunch of no fans. It's going to be almost like a spring game. I guess I'll go with Rutgers, but I think Michigan State will play inspired to try to get to the quick lane Jiffy Bowl or whatever.
It's a good appetizer for the Michigan State fans who will root for their number one team in the noon slot with Ohio State playing Michigan. So Michigan State needs this for bowl eligibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
They give me Rutgers.
Ooh, okay. You're with me. Last one. This one matters a little bit more, especially for Texas. Texas at Texas A&M. First time two teams will play since 2011 when A&M left the Big 12. Texas 5.5 point favorite on the road. Over under is 48.5, 7:30 on ABC. A&M pretty much blew their playoff chances last week, but that would lead you to believe, with how crazy the SEC's been, that they're just going to beat Texas anyway. Things have not gone according to plan in the SEC the last several weeks. I think this one does go according to plan. I think Texas wins comfortably. They get in the playoff.
I agree with that. I think Texas is a good football team, and they're better than they've shown at times. So they're gonna win this game by 10 points.
I do think Texas will win, but because it's rivalry week, it lends itself to a bit of chaos. I think Texas Tech gives them a game. They find a way to cover, but Texas does win.
It's going to be an insane atmosphere between that and in the game in Columbus. We'll get some good atmospheres. Even, Clemson, South Carolina is always charged up as well. So should be a good weekend of football across the country. Thanksgiving as well. Hopefully the Lions can pull it out for the first time in a long time. And we don't have to, choke down our turkey and not enjoy it here in the great state of Michigan. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure to like the video if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, and head to the Wolverine.com. Don't even need a promo code this week. Flash sale until Saturday night. Get in for $1 for your first week, then 50% off an annual subscription if you stick around after that. So no reason not to get in over at the Wolverine.com. Get behind the paywall for all of our Michigan, Ohio State coverage, basketball, recruiting, transfer portal, NIL, everything at the Wolverine.com. Happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see everyone next time.